What if I told you that one of the keys to your spiritual awakening, to evolving, to healing your emotional wounds, and finally stepping into that life you truly deserve, it lies hidden within you, okay? Within your inner child. Now, for most of my life, like I've said before, I struggled deeply with addiction, self-worth, self-sabotage, and constantly chasing validation outside of myself. Now, over the past 6 years, I've tried various different things to heal and let go of everything that held me back. And one of the most impactful things I did was reconnect with my inner child. So, if you've ever felt blocked, stuck, or repeatedly drawn into these negative cycles, despite trying your best, this video could hold some of the answers that you've been looking for. Okay, welcome back. I'm LJ, and today I'm going to reveal exactly why your inner child holds the key to progressing in your awakening and how healing this part of yourself will transform your entire life, just like it did mine. Okay, so, but before we go into this, right, let's understand what we're talking about, because before I started this spiritual journey, I had never heard of the phrase inner child. And even if I did, I don't think I would have paid too much attention to it, because the macho mask I was wearing would have probably seen it as some type of weakness or childish, right? So your inner child is the emotional, vulnerable, innocent part of you that is formed during your earliest years. Okay, it's the part of you that experienced unconditional love, but also pain, rejection, or trauma. This part never went away, right? It simply lives inside you. Now, for me, my inner child was this scared little boy who felt abandoned and unloved when my parents split. I was about 4 years old. Now, I didn't see the relevance of the moment that my parents were just not, they weren't getting on and they decided to separate. But I internalized that as it was my fault. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough for my dad to stay. Okay? So I was this little boy who always felt like the black sheep, who internalized rejection and believed that I was never enough, never good enough, right? And for decades, right, this wounded child within me was influenced. It influenced every decision I made, right up until I was an adult, right up until probably at 40 years old, without even realizing it. Okay, and the thing is, right, if your inner child is wounded or neglected, those wounds will play out subconsciously in your life, right? No matter what age you are, right? And it's all unconscious. Now, if your inner child is healed and loved, it becomes your greatest ally in your spiritual awakening and your growth to truly connecting who you are, within. And this is something that I always talk about is connecting with who you are deeper inside, so that will make your path clearer. Right? Healing my inner child, it wasn't just therapeutic, right? It was spiritual. It was the catalyst to finally become the person that I was meant to be. Even though I didn't know who I was meant to be, I still had this feeling that I was destined for something different. Okay, and your inner child, it doesn't just hold memories, right? It holds beliefs, right? And these beliefs that we inherit when we are children, up until the age of 7, 8, is probably where we get a lot of our core limiting beliefs. Okay, and these beliefs will shape your self-worth, your relationships, your relationship with people, with money, with success. It really does shape your outlook on life and your whole reality. Okay, and if you look at it on a psychologically side, right, your early experiences, right, whether they're good or bad, okay, happy or sad, painful or joy, they imprint these beliefs. And if you felt unworthy, rejected, or abandoned as a child, like I did, right, you subconsciously recreate those same patterns as an adult, because that's your inner child's comfort zone. Now, if you look at it on the spiritual side, these subconscious beliefs, they act as energetic blocks. So they prevent you from fully stepping into your true nature and purpose, your spiritual power, your authentic self-expression. Now, for example, right, in my own life, right, my inner child's core belief was like, I'm not worthy of love or, happiness or anything, right? As an adult, This belief manifested through my addiction, my constant self-sabotage, and always looking for the approval externally, right? I unconsciously chose relationships and circumstances that reinforced that painful belief because it was familiar. Okay. And it took me, best part of 40 years to understand this. Okay. And when I looked back, I could see these patterns play out over and over and over again. It wasn't until, I built that relationship, I healed that inner child, right? Because when I done that, right, the repeating cycles, the painful cycles, they stopped. Okay. And I had been trying to understand why I kept making the mistakes that I made throughout my life. And when I understand about the healing the inner child, that's when things started to click for me. Okay, so how how exactly does healing your inner child, become powerful, right? When you are looking to evolve spiritually, when you're looking to just to step into your truth, right? Because your inner child is a doorway, right? Healing it reconnects you with who you are, your deepest truths, your intuition, your creativity, and ultimately your higher self, right? So when your inner child healing, right, it reconnects you with your heart, okay? The heart is the seat of your intuition, your purpose, your authenticity, right? And when your inner child feels loved, right, and safe, you become free to follow your path rather than repeating those painful subconscious patterns. Okay, you reclaim lost pieces of yourself. That creativity, that playfulness, spontaneity, joy. And these are all essential parts of your spiritual essence. Okay, so in my spiritual awakening journey, right, the most transformative moments came when I reconnected with that part of me, that inner child, because I remember being this very creative person as a child. I loved drawing, I loved art, I loved building things, and when I got a bit older, all of that disappeared. Okay, and I realised that my addiction, my depression, my self-sabotage, they were cries for attention from that little wounded, boy that was. He desperately needed love. He desperately needed reassurance, and he desperately needed healing. And when I started to understand that and give him what he needed, this is when doors unlocked for me. Spiritual insights, my intuition got stronger and healing poured into my life. And I started to feel love again. Like, I know when you love your partner and stuff, but I mean love for myself. And even saying this right now, I'm getting quite emotional because not in an egotistical way, but I hated myself for so long. I hated the man I became. I just hated who I was, right? And look now, and I have that love for myself, and I truly do. Uh, so, oh gee, I didn't realise I would get so emotional there. But how do you recognise these wounds? Okay, so when you are on this journey of healing your inner child, okay, you have to. I hate saying have to, right? You must clearly identify specific wounds, right? So let's say how do we do that, right? I'm still taken back about the emotion that I felt there. Okay, so we have these signs in your adult life, right? So, for me, it was this repeated self-sabotage, okay, and addiction, because I would get so far in something and then something would sabotage it, right? And it was normally my addiction that would sabotage it. I would be a little bit sober, then, somebody would ask me to go and, out somewhere, and I would promise I'm not going to drink, and then I would have one drink, and then it would be a sabotage, then it would be a bender, then my relationships would all fall apart. So it was a repeating pattern always, right? Get so far, and then I would sabotage it. I would be doing well in a job, I'd sabotage it. Okay, and this was a pattern throughout my whole life. Okay, and it was this chronic, unworthy or inadequate feeling. And again, that took me to my addiction, where I would try and find some sort of peace of mind. Sometimes I would have this click, and I would feel happy, and I was this kind of life and soul of the party when I was drunk, and people would call me a Jekyll and Hyde because sometimes I could be very nasty and aggressive depending on the situation. But everything changed when I drank. Okay, and I had anxiety. It was this, and the doctor had coined it social anxiety disorder. But it was just this anxiety, and it was around abandonment, rejection, or like judgment, and that was in my relationships. That was a big part of the rejection factor. I always needed to be reassured that the person loved me or that they weren't going to leave me. And even up till most recently, even with my wife, and she stuck by me through all the dark times when most people would have left. She was there right by my side, but yet there was still feelings that I wasn't good enough, that she was going to leave me for someone else. And we'd had 2 children, we'd been married 10 years or whatever. And it was still this, and I would have to get this reassurance from her that she wouldn't leave me. And it sounds weak and stuff like that, but you know what? I really don't care what people think, because I'm trying to shine a light on this so that other people can understand that you're not alone. This is something that we go through, and healing your inner child will help you overcome this. Okay, because I was constantly seeking validation, right? Whether that would be relationships and jobs, I always had to be the top, and it was always had to be the best, and I always needed to you know, I always had to get some type of validation from wherever I was. Okay, and I would avoid being vulnerable, and also being intimate. I would try and at times I would maybe keep people at bay because I was so scared of that being rejected. So my relationships were, if you ask my ex-partners now, they'll tell you, I don't know what they'll tell you, but I'm friends with most of them and stuff like that. But there was always a part of me that was never, I was never ready to fully give because I was so scared of the rejection. And when I recognised these inner wounds, right, because the biggest thing is my romantic relationships, right? They mirrored my feelings of abandonment, right? And the partners I've had in the past, well, most of them were emotionally unavailable. Okay, and this just reinforced my childhood belief that I'm not worthy of lasting love. Okay, and these patterns would repeat my whole life, causing frustration, pain, confusion. These patterns aren't random, right? These are powerful indicators of the inner child wounding, right? And they're waiting to be healed. So if you can look at these patterns, this is the areas where you need to look to heal, to move past of it. So how did I do that? Okay, I was lucky enough. I met this wonderful healer, and she went through a process, and I adapted the process myself. But it was so it's your inner child, right? So you sit down. I sat up. What it was is there was 2 chairs, right? There was me, and then there was my inner child, right? So it was just closing your eyes, visualizing your younger self, right, at the age. So me, it was about 4 or 5, okay, and just visualizing there, sitting there, and starting a conversation with them, right? Comforting them, reassuring them, asking what they need to feel safe and loved, right? And when I done it with her, that was a one-time event, okay? And I had 3 sessions with her, which was great, but that was a one-time event. I continued this after it because I needed to really sit with myself and rebuild that connection. Okay, and also I wrote a letter, right? So expressing unconditional love, compassion, and it was just powerful to do that. Okay, I apologised for neglecting his needs, and I promised him that I was here for him to protect and support him forever. Right, and it was just the reassurance that I was giving him, and I cried. I cried. I cried. So much, because even when I look at my son now, I see like a mini me, and it's so it's so heartbreaking to know that when I was a child, I had a great mum, and my dad was a great man, right? But they separated, and I had a great stepdad, and I don't blame my parents or anybody for anything, right? But as a child, that I didn't obviously get what I needed, right? So for me, with having young children myself, now I'm giving my inner child what I missed as a child, right? So I'm giving my inner child that love, that support, that reassurance, that affection, that nurturing, that and that encouragement. But now I also do that with my children, because I know through this inner child healing journey what I didn't get, and I know how to give that to my children, and it's consciously parenting. So I had to reparent my inner child, but I then reinforce it by giving my children what they need. Right, so when I constantly done these practices, this is powerful shifts occurred because my addiction was already gone by this point, but the thoughts and stuff about the addiction was still kind of in my head, but those thoughts are gone now. I don't have them at all. I really don't. I don't think about drinking. I don't think about taking drugs. Like I'm 100% clean and sober. And even when I go through difficult times, I don't think a drink will solve this or a drug will help. No. And also about my confidence within myself. And because I always had to have something to feel confident, whether it was drink, alcohol, or drugs, whatever. But my natural confidence elevated. Okay. And then the other doors started opening up in my life because I was ready to deal with other things. And for the first time in my life, I felt deeply. I felt my emotions because for so long I had been suppressing those emotions. From the age of 15, I started drinking and taking drugs. So my emotional maturity level was a 15-year-old. And when I'm at 40 years old, I'm dealing with all this kind of suppressed emotions. It's an emotional time. And still now, I'm don't claim to be healed and have all the answers. I'm just sharing what my experience is, and I'm hoping that this will maybe shine some light for someone else to so they can approach their journey to heal their inner child, because it's such a powerful thing, and everybody's going to be different. Everyone's going to have different experiences. But for me, it was having that conversation, visualizing, having a dialogue, telling him he's amazing, he's loved, and writing a letter, and then just consciously reparenting that inner child over a period of however long it takes. Okay, because when you do this, the healing the inner child, it leads to the spiritual liberation, freedom. Okay, because when I spiritually awoke, right, as I said, I had this profound experience, and I thought that was it, right? But no, it's not. It's an ongoing process, and on this journey, it requires wholeness, self-love, and the integration of all the deepest wounds, because the deepest wounds are our lessons that you're here to learn. They're not burdens on us or punishment. It's giving us what we need, and I think a lot of people get that, they misunderstand that. And your inner child holds the exact wounds that you need to heal to fully step into your true nature and purpose. And when your inner child feels safe, loved, and healed, then you start to connect with your higher self and your intuition. Your heart starts to open up. And this is when you come from the heart. This is when you start to manifest the things that you want, your purpose, your joy, whatever it is you're looking to create, because the subconscious blocks are starting to dissolve, right? And for me, I can live authentically without seeking validation or approval. I'm actually so at peace with myself. And don't get me wrong, I still have fears and doubts and all the normal stuff, but I'm not seeking like anything from anybody else or anything else. I don't have the shiny object syndrome like I used to have, or I don't have to have all the designer clothes and the watches. No, I don't, right? Because I spent decades feeling stuck, lost, unfulfilled, and I had all of that, but I still felt like I was, this piece of shit, even though I had everything out on the outside that you would make somebody think that I was happy. I wasn't. And the missing key was the true freedom, okay, it was inside me, and it was hidden inside me within that inner child. And once I healed him, that's when things started to unfold, and I started to feel free, and I started to really experience love on a different level. So it's such an important part of the journey, because everything starts with you. And if you can really tap into your heart, you'll never truly know what it is that you want. And my mentor, William Whitecloud, he is the best mentor I could ever have asked for. This guy is amazing, but everything is the heart is. If people chase the wrong thing, they're going to create more of what they don't want. But when you connect to your heart and you follow your heart and you listen to what your intuition is guiding you, you'll be guided to your purpose. And this is the whole journey that I've been on. This past year, I thought that I was stuck, and I was in isolation, and I was spending so much time meditating. But that again was for me, because I would never have had the insights and the time and the healing and I spent hours upon hours, meditating daily, because I didn't know what else to do. And it was that year where I truly done probably the kind of biggest part of my healing. And it was allowing me to be authentically me and follow my heart without the fear of, not achieving success or not providing for my family, because I believe it's all in divine timing and the universe is looking after me. But I had to look after myself first. Okay, so your inner child isn't just part of your past, right? It's one of the most important, keys, I would say, to your highest, spiritual future. The pain that you've went through, the wounds that you carry, they're not punishment, right? They're invitations to heal, okay, to awaken, to step into your true nature and purpose. Right? You don't have to wait decades like I did, right? I didn't have anyone to teach me or guide me like this. I had to uncover things myself, and then when I started taking steps, then the right people were shown to me, right? So I had to take the action first. Okay, so I didn't. It wasn't people didn't come up and say to me, right, you need to heal your inner child. No, it was a process. So if you want to go on this journey, your inner child is calling out for your healing, your love, and your attention right now. Now, when you answer that call, that's the greatest gift you could give yourself. Okay, and it's one of the keys, I would say, to creating that life that you truly desire. Okay, and I believe that to the bottom of my heart. Right, and if this message resonates with you, then you know what to do. You know it's time to connect with that inner child and spend time, loving yourself. Okay, and if you got any value for this, please give me a wee comment below. Let me know, what inner child wounds are you ready to heal? Because sharing this openly, it gives other people the opportunity to be vulnerable and authentic. Because we're on this journey together. As I said, we are all one, right? There's no separation. When we come together and unite, we can create magic, right? And if you want more videos like this, just me sharing, my journey, my honest experiences, then subscribe to the channel, because this is me stepping into my true nature and purpose when I'm being authentically me, open, and I'm not scared of crying. I'm not scared of any of that. I'm not scared of the judgment that people might throw my way, because you know what? I know I'm living aligned with who I'm supposed to be. Okay, and remember, you're not alone, right? Your inner child deserves love. You deserve love, right? Let's do this together, because I love you guys, right? Have a great day, and you'll be another video for you right here, or you can subscribe right here, and I'll catch you on the next one.